you were not impressed by George H.W. Bush. Donald Trump was not impressed by George H.W.
No,
Bush.
actually, he said, they've all come to see me. John Connolly, I had to count my fingers. Howard Baker, I had no idea he was so short. George Bush, what a stiff. He didn't like Jimmy Carter. He said, surely there has to be somebody better, somebody better. I said, well, there is. And he said, well, let's get behind him. And I said, no, it's you. And he said, you're out of your mind. At that point, he had other real estate mountains to climb, but he had very strong opinions about trade, about NATO. Even then, the kind of his core signature issues were also well in place.
But they were considered so eccentric then. I remember very well. If you had questions about free trade, like, you were considered a crazy person.
There's no question. In 1988, we made an exploratory trip to New Hampshire. More people came out to see the Black Trump helicopter than came out to see Vice President George Bush the week before. And if you saw his speech, why don't our NATO partners pay their fair share? Why are we getting creamed in these trade negotiations? Why isn't America's military the strongest in the entire world? I mean, all of his core issues go all the way back to the 80s.
But there just didn't seem to be an audience for them, or there was no way for people to hear it.
Well, first of all, we were premature. In other words, by 2016, the American people are completely fed up with both parties, with all institutions, and for the first time with the media, who they recognize are part of the problem, not part of the solution. So the idea of a businessman being nominated for president had only really happened in 1940 when Wendell Willkie, who was technically a lawyer, but the head of a utility, was nominated for president of the United States. And that was in one of the greatest public relations booms of all time, really a model to study if you want to see how to do this. So the country wasn't ready for somebody who hadn't been a senator or a governor or a general. But by 2016, they were. And he was the right man at the right time. And the America First message had the resonance that it didn't yet have in 1980 or in 1988.
Did you think he was going to run in 2016?
I did. The reason I thought that was because immediately after 2012, on New Year's Day of 2013, the first day of the year, we traditionally would exchange New Year's greetings by phone. I called him at Mar-a-Lago, and he said, I should have run against Obama. I mean, Mitt Romney, that guy choked. I mean, he always choked. And what's this apologizing? He was always apologizing. I could have beaten Obama. I'm not going to make this mistake again. And I said, really? And he said, yes. In fact, I've already applied to trademark the phrase, make America great again. At that point, I realized he was going to run in 2016. I always believed he would.
What advice did you give to him when he said that?
Well, first of all, I said, you've got to take a look at how conservative media works today. I mean, Mort Zuckerman spends a fortune to print a newspaper. He's hemorrhaging money and nobody's reading it. Whereas you could go on Twitter and talk to everybody for free.
Really? So you gave him?
I think it would be fair to say that we helped him get acquainted with conservative alternative media, which at that point was beginning its heyday. You not only talk radio, but Breitbart, the Daily Caller, and so on. So these things are starting to take off, and Twitter. Social media at that point is the Wild West. There's no censorship. There's no control like you have today. It was the perfect medium for Donald Trump, particularly since he liked to say short, pungent, and provocative things.
Were you surprised by how people in Washington and the press corps responded to Trump?
No, because their response was completely elitist. In other words, in their mindset, this was all decided. This was going to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton. The policies essentially would be identical: endless war, erosion of our civil liberties, continued debt on top of debt, higher and higher taxes. I mean, essentially everything would remain the same. It's it's one view. It's the globalist view. It's the new world order, if you will. And therefore, it was beyond their comprehension that Donald Trump, who they viewed as a cartoon character, as a caricature, that he could actually not only come to symbolize the people's revulsion with our current government and our current system, but he would become a symbol for the resistance and for an entire different direction.
It's fun. I missed it. I always thought, and I worked in the media, of course, my whole life, and I always thought the group that the media in Washington hated most were evangelicals. And here was Trump, who was not an evangelical, he's from New York City, and has a lot of the kind of cultural attitudes of New York City. He's not a screaming social conservative, or wasn't at the time, and I thought, well, maybe they can hear Trump because, he's kind of from their world. I never quite understood why they hated him so much. I mean, it was like a dog whistle that only they could hear.
It's really simple. Because he can't be controlled.